So farms in the future is really the focus of my research, not in the sense that you should listen to me for investment advice or anything like that, but in terms of imaginaries. So meaning these sort of cultural visions that also have this technical component. So what do people want to have happen? What do they think will happen? And how does that relate to sort of technological innovation? These are the things that I spent all day thinking about. And I mostly have spent 4 years asking urban farmers in and around New York, to a lesser degree, Boston, Atlanta, now thankfully Dallas, what do you think? And I think I've heard a lot of the same things, which is, well, we absolutely have to stop subsidizing commodity growers in the Midwest to grow corn that we don't know what to do with, and soy now that we don't know what to do with. And that because of monocropping and the overuse of chemicals, pesticides, and fertilizers, has destroyed the environment, has eroded topsoil. It's just a mess. So if you change that at all, once you change that one bottom block of the Jenga tower, a lot sort of starts to shift. And I think one thing that we're already seeing shift is that the Farm Bill that was just passed has money for urban agriculture specifically for the first time. And this isn't a situation like World War II where there's no other choice. This is, I think long term, there's no other choice. We need to connect people in cities where most people live to food production and fresh food and more sustainable production methods. But I think short term, this is really a good sign that there is some opportunity for farms to be reinvented to serve humans instead of companies. So if you're serving companies, you're looking at short-term profits for shareholders, and you're growing corn and turning it into chemicals and feed. If you're serving humans, you're thinking about, well, what do humans want to eat? What's good for them to eat? What tastes good? How can we get it to them? They're going to want it fresh. Let's have a virtuous competition where we all want to have fresher and fresher food that tastes better, that's nutrient dense. And I think that again, that signal probably seems simple, but means a lot of things. We're going to see more production shift to in and around cities. We're going to see people who have money, investors and governments who didn't used to pay attention to this stuff, or they might look at food aid. They'd sort of buy some food to give away that was, not perishable necessarily. Now they're going to say, no, we need to invest in infrastructure, in farming, and we need to grow farmers. So there's been beginning farmer training programs. Arguably, they've targeted this kind of libertarian model of, I'm one person who's going to gain the skills and get this lease, take out this loan and farm. And I think what we need to see more of, and we're going to see more of, are more collective models who are helping people who don't have those resources, who've been excluded from farming or used to be farmers a couple generations ago, and now, if they're a little younger, are not thinking of themselves that way, but might be if they had the pathways. So that's where I think you're seeing awesome institutions coming in and saying, how can we look at, there's enough land. It's just a matter of who's stewarding that land for what purpose. And so some of that is technical expertise transfer, is sort of knowledge transfer, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of it is opportunity transfer and just the creation of the concept in the first place. If people don't know that they could be a farmer, they're not going to seek out the knowledge. And if they don't feel that they can get the loan, or there's no opportunity, they don't have the resources, they're not going to be a farmer. So you have to connect those dots. And I think if policy can shift, and if educators can do their jobs increasingly with that in mind, then we'll see more small farmers in and around cities as just a first consequence. And that would, I think, be a good signal again overall. I think if you go the high-tech futuristic end, there's several trends I think we should be talking about. One is just cellular agriculture. So you don't need to grow a whole organism if you're only looking to eat a tissue. Most of the time, we are basically eating tissues. We're not eating a raw, untransformed plant, unless you're eating raw plants only, which some people are. And there, obviously this affects meat more, but I think down the line, it just affects anything where you're really looking for just some kind of tissue with some kind of texture and taste, as opposed to a whole organism. At the same time, the market is signaling, that we're going to pay more for whole, natural, clean products, and I put all those in quotation marks. But so those are kind of two almost opposite signals that are happening, where people are investors are rushing toward cell ag, and people are buying clean ingredients. I think in the middle, you have some really awesome opportunity around plant-based. So you could say, I started with a whole plant, and the plant wasn't transformed in any way. Maybe it's a heritage grain, maybe it's some produce you don't normally eat, and I've transformed it into this awesome product that has these other organoleptic qualities. So it tastes like meat, or it fulfills that need for protein in terms of just the numbers, right? It's full of protein. So I think those are, you could sort of put them on a spectrum. Those are three trends that aren't necessarily the same as urban farming. They may not affect every urban farmer, but There are food trends that I don't think are going to go away. I don't think suddenly you're going to wake up and millennials won't care about clean labeling, transparency, and good ingredients that are nutritious. I think a lot more people are going to be looking at plant-based diets, at least part-time, and so there's a big opportunity there to just rethink what plants can do. Whether maybe sometimes you're growing something because of a texture, maybe, and you're working with someone higher up the chain in terms of food product making who needs that texture. So again, maybe it's an opportunity, maybe it's a market that you can cultivate by working with the bigger food companies who are creating products to provide good ingredients. And then, in the future, it may be that farming shifts toward this model of sort of brewing, right? It may be more that, and if you're looking at small scale and transparency, it may be about sort of craft production of different kinds of, especially proteins, those higher value products like meat and milk and cheese. Just like today we have craft cheese, but that if the technology is scalable, is democratized, it may not be. It may be sort of another big food product, in which case, again, farmers are not going to have as much of a say. So I think this is we're at a kind of crossroads where if you're a farmer and you want to have a say in some of these discussions, the first thing is get a little educated and then begin to formulate maybe what do you really want to have happen and express that. Because if you don't, you are essentially ceding the ground to the big companies, the Tysons of the world, some of these bigger, well-funded startups like Just, and on the product side, Ginkgo Bioworks. I mean, these are billion-dollar companies for a reason, and they aren't necessarily thinking too much about farmers. The people who run them aren't farmers. They might have started in some cases, like Just, thinking a lot about sustainability in land and talking to farmers. But at this point, I think these are trends to watch. If you're a small farmer and you're thinking both about opportunities, but maybe to some degree changes in the market that could maybe negatively affect you, maybe look at some of the food tech opportunities not as either just demonic forces that I wish would go away, or as some other industry, but as relating back to who gets paid to grow which kind of plants. And in the end, I think water is going to be a lot closer everywhere. So look at 3D farming, look at kelp, and look at other sort of bioreactor style products like spirulina. So microalgae, it's basically the best superfood in the world for humans is this algae, green, blue, fresh. It's really good. It's like kind of tasteless, just nice creamy texture, like a pesto-y kind of thing. And most people only had it dry, and that's an opportunity. There's a guy here, my friend, growing it as a startup, selling it fresh, and chefs like it. It's just something interesting. It's like a new ingredient out of nowhere that's a superfood. So that's just one example of, it's not traditionally fitting that mold of let me grow lots of varieties of lettuces and basils, but it could be of interest, maybe not to every urban farmer, but to some.